Dun, 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 dun. Hello, all you beautiful people. Thanks for coming today. Of course, we're doing a history stream on war. So I did the appropriate war background because it says America. And today we have Purple. Everybody knows Purple. Jenny.
Hang on, I got a notification that you're on.
Oh my goodness, Nels. Mute yourself. So I'm going to mute Nels for a second. So we got Nels, Mr. Shadow Kitty. We have Genesis. And Andy came and joined us, so I feel all fucking special today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming, buddy.
Yeah.
I wanted to get some variety of people in here, so this is great. This is great. Purple and Jenny are easy. They'll come whenever. Oh, that didn't sound right. Let me correct that.
Phrasing.
Oh, no, it's not a problem. I'll come several times a day if I have the chance.
There we go. Hey, Will, thanks for coming. Sandy, Kelly,
I don't talk
Tobin.
about those kinds of things.
You don't.
Purple.
Yeah, no. Jenny never talks about sex.
No, never.
Purple,
Nope.
would you say that you have a problem where you can't stop coming?
We are not
No.
making this stream about sex, young lady.
No, I mean arriving to a stream. What are you thinking?
Oh.
How could that be a
Dirty
problem?
mind! Dirty mind!
No, not in our community. Ever.
No.
Never.
So, actually, Jen brought up the idea of doing a World War II stream and is interested in the subject. And then I caught Andy and said, hey, are you into this? And he said, my kid's studying it. So I'm going to let Genesis start. What you got?
So I really don't know anything about World War II. All I mentioned was that the only thing I know about history is like the most efficient weapons that were used throughout wars. And I have quite a library of sources here that I looked up for this stream in particular, just to, refresh the old noggin. And I'm just going to talk about some random guns, when they were used, and I'm going to try to keep them in categories of like what type of weapon they are, whether it's a pistol, an SMG, a heavy machine gun, or a tank, or, like a rocket launcher. So
Okay.
First gun I'm going to talk about is actually not even a Nazi-made gun. A lot of guns that the Nazis used were carryovers from World War I, and several of their weaponry was actually imported from other places. One of the first revolvers used by the German military and later the Wehrmacht, which is the Nazi military, was the Bodeo model 1889, which is a I think double action revolver. It was made in Italy and it was used by the Royal Italian Army, and it's been in countless wars, but it was both used by the Germans and the Italians at the start of World War II.
Okay. Nice.
I
Now, I
show
didn't
you,
know that was an Italian. I knew about the gun itself, but I didn't know where it came from. I had no idea.
Here, I'll pull up a picture just so the audience can have an idea as to what this looks like.
Yeah, throw it up there.
So this is the Bodeo model 1889, and it's a pretty standard revolver, pretty thin grip. This would later be replaced. Well, actually, if you guys want to talk about this first before I change to the next gun, please do, because it's going to be really boring if it's just going to be me talking about guns.
I'll cut you off eventually, or someone will butt in and go off on a different subject. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not that familiar with the handheld guns. I'm more into the big guns, like on the battleships.
Well, what I'm curious about, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, from what I understand, the U.S. infantryman had his rifle and a pistol, the 1905. I think it was a Beretta. I'm not sure. But the average foot soldier for the Wehrmacht did not have a pistol, did he? Or was it just left for officers? I'm not sure.
They had machine pistols. I can actually get into the next gun I was going to talk about as an example of this. So one of the most iconic German Nazi handheld pistols was the Luger.
Yeah.
The Luger pistol has appeared in many. Here, I'll change the image.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll keep up with you. Keep going.
Luger pistol. So this is a Luger. You might have seen it in like movies or in video games. Very iconic design. So the Luger is one of the sidearms that the Nazis used, and I think it had. Hold on, let me just double check here. I don't want to say something wrong. So
it was an 8-round gun.
The Luger P08 pistol. It is short recoil action, not double action. So the recoil actually loads the next bullet up into the chamber, the recoil of the gun. And the reason why the Luger held 8 shots and not anything more than that was because of some of the limitations that Germany was put under after World War I, which I'll talk about later when I get into their submachine guns. Another common pistol that they would use would be the, let me make sure, the Mauser C96. C96.
I know these guns.
Do you, Nels? I don't. Well, everybody knows the Luger. Oh, yeah, I recognize that.
On a side note, my father was in the European theater, and he brought back some souvenirs, and one was a Mauser and one was a Luger.
Nice.
So I was playing with these things as a kid.
Not knowing what they were really worth and what you were playing with, right?
I didn't know what they were worth, but they were interesting toys.
Yeah. So the Mauser C96 is a machine pistol. It has semi-automatic fire, and it shoots in short bursts. But again, it didn't have a large ammo capacity because of the restrictions put on Germany at the time. Now I'm going to talk about a gun that I don't have an image for this, so I'm just going to close Google Images. I'm going to talk about one of the crazy guns. This is technically considered a pistol, and it's called the Nazi belt buckle pistol. What it is it's a gun inside a belt buckle. You flip a lever, and then the barrel shoots out, and you can shoot people from your belt buckle. And only 15 were ever produced for the SS officers who guarded Hitler. Cool, interesting fact.
That is
so. Were they single shot weapons? I would imagine.
Yeah, they were single shot. It was like last resort.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Another interesting thing the Germans experimented with and produced in small numbers were they were trying to do guns that could shoot around corners.
Yeah.
So they were each fitted with a little periscope so you could see around the corner, and they actually had curved barrels ranging anywhere from 30 to 90 degrees.
Yeah, but only the 30-degree angle ones ever actually worked. The rest of them broke.
The 30-degree was the only one that got put into production. The other ones tended to explode too often.
Yeah.
Well, you're trying to put a trajected bullet around a sharp corner. I can't even imagine. Now, the 30-degree angle makes total sense that it would work, but the rest, you're not going to get a 90 out of that. My God.
Well, the other problem is even with the 30-degree barrel, the friction of it going around the curve would cause the bullet to break up into such small shrapnel that it was no longer lethal.
Why couldn't they have just designed it so that the firing chamber of the gun was past the curve?
Now that would have been a much more intelligent design. Yes.
Now, come on. Now we're talking about the Germans. No.
I want to bounce off what Genesis was saying, or that he mentioned was that a lot of German weapons development in the interwar period was constrained by the Versailles Treaty. The Versailles Treaty was the treaty that ended World War I. So a lot of the tank designs, a lot of weapon systems were constrained. They had to be done in secret.
How did they get away with designing that one machine gun, that, what was it, the Steyr, that could just
the Sturm, the automatic weapon?
Yeah, it said it would just cut down troops like ribbons.
I am not sure. I know that they got around tank development by calling them tractors officially, and using tractor chassis.
No. This was a tripod mounted machine gun.
Like the
MG42.
MG42, right.
Ooh,
Called the zipper gun because it sounded like a zipper.
Yeah.
Ooh, sweet brought knowledge. Watch out.
It was Hitler's chainsaw, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It could. Yeah. It was pretty
okay.
different.
It was what was mounted. There were 200 of them mounted at Normandy.
Which MG are we talking about? MG08 or
42?
Oh, 42.
Well,
Actually, I was going to talk about 42 later on. I think 42 MG42 is the first general purpose machine. No, actually, that is incorrect. I'm thinking of a different one. Sorry. I'm thinking of MG34. No. Yes. MG34, which is the predecessor to the MG42, is considered the first universal machine gun for multi-purpose uses, and not just a heavy machine gun or a light machine gun, or submachine gun.
that was a lot of the development got into multi-purpose weapons like that, which is also where the renowned German 88 came from, because they could develop it as being an anti-aircraft gun for the Navy, but then they put it on mounts that it could be fired level. So in combat, it was also used as an anti-tank weapon.
Yeah.
Ooh, I bet it was.
Let's see. I got some other cool guns to talk about. So something that I found like interesting was there is actually a Czechoslovakian pistol that the Nazis frequently used, and that is the CZVZ 27, which was made by the Českoslovakia factory, and it's I don't know, it's just a pretty cool looking gun. Here, let me find a picture for you.
I like that gun. It's got a cute name.
CZVZ.
Yeah.
It's got a cute name and it kills things. I like that gun. Oh, Jenny. All right, now, Jen.
So this is what it looks like. Not as flashy as the other guns that I've shown so far, but I mean, the simplistic design kind of works for me. I don't know.
Yeah, the Luger was a much prettier gun.
But didn't it jam? Wasn't it more likely to jam?
The Luger?
The Luger. Like in comparison to the, I guess it was the 1911 sidearm that a lot of Americans had, the semi-automatic.
Well, the Luger was an officer's gun for a while.
Mm-hmm.
It was general purpose.
What caliber was the Luger?
I think it was 45, wasn't it?
45?
I think so.
Oh.
Luger pistol.
We had one of those in our house too.
Here, let me just look up a Luger for a quick second.
It shot a 7.65.
Wow.
Now,
That hurt.
how often did the officers actually have to use their guns? Because it's not like they're really in combat situations.
Well,
They
some
mostly use them on other
you'd
officers.
be they're NCOs were in combat quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they weren't generally on the front line. They were usually protected by some kind of squad.
Well, the order of battle would have been your brigade commander, which would have been an officer, which would have been right on the front lines with everybody.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I have an interesting factoid about the Luger that not a lot of you might know. The Luger is an improved redesign of the Burkhardt automatic pistol, which had a stock on it like a rifle, but it was a pistol.
Yeah.
A lot of the design elements of a Luger are carried over from the pistol part of the Burkhardt automatic pistol, but they made it more compact and easier to use. So,
What qualifies something as a pistol versus a rifle or a gun? I mean,
Isn't
what do
that
they
the
have
length
to
of the
technically-
barrel?
No,
I honestly don't remember.
I know that the difference between like a submachine gun and a rifle is that the rifle has a longer range to it, has a larger muzzle velocity. And,
Yeah, I don't know what a precise definition is, but I think in general usage, a pistol is just a gun that can be used with one hand, whereas a rifle needs two hands.
When I was growing up, my mom had one of those 22 rifles that went into the butt of the gun. Anybody ever remember those? They had like a big plastic butt on them, and you could just break down the whole thing, and you could slide the barrel in, and then take
the retractables.
the mechanism off of it and throw it in the butt of the gun. No, it was just all disassembled and put in the butt of the gun. Well, my father had bought a pistol grip for it because it was only a 22.
Yeah.
Man, that was fun to shoot with a pistol grip. I'm not even gonna lie. With that long ass barrel, you felt like a bitch, a bad bitch. It was fun to shoot though.
Yeah.
My
Most of my
dad
knowledge
had-
surrounds bombers because that's what my
dad had
grandfather
a double
did.
barrel shotgun that was made by Sears.
Yeah, the rifle used to kill Kennedy was a mail order rifle.
Really?
Yeah,
Yep.
a Russian. It had no rifling, I understand, and the bullet was this odd shape it was well known for tumbling and all kinds of weird stuff.
Interesting.
Now, you want to talk about bombers and bomb ordnance? I can talk all day, but guns, I don't know very much about.
We'll talk about aircraft next if you want, Sweet. That's cool.
I can tell you all about
I figure we'd talk all about it. You know, we get into the tanks and then we get into the politics too.
Yeah, this is the last pistol I'm going to talk about. It's the Mauser HSC, which I believe is a improvement of the I can't remember which pistol it's an improvement of. Doesn't really matter. It has a self-cocking hammer, and it's I think one of the first of its model to have a self-cocking hammer. Self-cocking hammers existed before this gun, but Hitler, well, not Hitler's specifications, but like the SS specifications for designing this gun was that it couldn't have an exposed hammer, so it only has a semi-exposed hammer. So all you see is a very small portion of a hammer cocked back, and to release the hammer, you just soft click it, you half pull the trigger, and it resets. And very interesting, seeing as it was like one of the first ones used by Nazi Germany to do that.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop talking about pistols. I could talk about tanks. I have like a bunch of different sources. I'll explain some of the stuff I have. I have machine guns, submachine guns. I got
That sounds like a whole
flamethrowers.
stream you have going there of just guns.
I came prepared. Here's the last thing I'll talk about, and it's the propaganda Gewehr grenade. It's hard to speak German. And what that is a grenade that's shot out of a grenade launcher that explodes in the air and drops propaganda flyers.
Really?
Yes, this is an actual thing that they use.
So it's like an old-fashioned T-shirt gun.
Yeah, except explosive.
That's funny.
So I can talk a little bit about tanks. The first quote unquote tank was a Sturmpanzerwagen, but that one's a little boring because it's not exactly what we think of as tanks. So I'm gonna start with a Panzer One.
More of an
Andy's not. Yeah.
much more of an armored troop carrier than it was a tank. I mean, it looked puny and pathetic. It was more just for battlefield support than it was anything else.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's a light tank. It
only had a machine gun on it, didn't it?
I believe it was mounted with
or did it have a 20mm cannon on it?
Are we talking about the
Those were all
ones?
built,
There's a
those
one
were all
set
built by
of machine
Mercedes,
guns.
right?
I'm trying to think. Hold on.
Panzer II had a cannon on it.
Yeah, the Panzer II had a cannon on it.
But the Panzer One had two automatic,
Weren't those all built by Mercedes?
I don't know.
I think the engines may have been, but they were manufactured by.
It was Heinkel, MAN, Krupp, and Daimler manufactured it.
Yeah, so all the Krupp stuff that's in your kitchen used to make tanks.
Woohoo! Great.
And other Nazi weaponry, not just tanks.
Hey, your Mitsubishi car was built by the folks who brought you the Zero.
So
Yep.
the Panzerkampfwagen 1 is it was first deployed in 1934. It saw service all the way to 1945, but like its armor wasn't that great. It was very susceptible to flanking, and there wasn't really a lot of firepower in it. But the Panzer II is where
I just want to talk about the Panzer One for a minute. The Panzer One, from
go
what I
ahead.
understand, it's supposed to be primarily a training weapon, a training vehicle.
That's what it was used for.
Right.
For the most part.
It was intended to be a training vehicle, and then it's like, oh snap, we're fighting, so we might as well use the Panzer One.
Okay. So we're at train. Oh shit! We have to use it because we don't have anything else, right?
Yeah.
Because they were supposed to basically replace them all with Panzer IIIs.
Yeah.
And the Panzer III production was so messed up that they just never got the numbers of the Panzer IIIs that they needed. And then the fours came out, which is the Tiger.
Yep.
No, 4 is not the Tiger.
You said earlier something. What is flanking? It sounds like something the crew does back at the barracks.
So flanking is when someone attacks you from the side, attacks your flank.
So in other words, the tank had good armor front and rear, but its side armor sucked.
Its front armor wasn't that great either, but it was a little bit better than its side armor.
But the Germans were known for the very first usage of sloped armor. So if you slope your armor, you actually increase its width by, if 45 degree, you increase it by the square root of 2. So 41%.
It's interesting. I was watching a YouTube video. I think it was the Tank Museum over in Britain, and they were talking about the T-34, which is a medium tank the Russians use, and they were talking about the trade-offs, because when you're using sloped armor, you have less space in the compartment for people to man the tank. Mm-hmm. And so that was one of the trade-offs that the Russians found, at least with sloped armor in their tank development, is that, we can have this sloped armor and it gives more protection, but there's just less people. There's less stuff we can cram into the vehicle.
Until the Germans came up with the 3-man turret, which solved that equation. And then the T-34 was already basically ramped up production, so the Soviets just didn't care.
Yep.
Well,
and the Soviets also had the KV-1.
Oh yeah.
Swede, explain the 3-man turret to us, because I think I know what that is, but just in case someone else is like
the
me,
turret is obviously the main gun,
right?
That moves, and then the way that the original turrets were such that only 2 men were in it, one to basically stow and hand ammo to the gunner, and then the actual gunner, the trigger man, sat down somewhere else. Well, the sloped armor took away his spot because it made the interior volume cramped,
Oh,
so
okay.
you move the gunner up into the turret, so now you have a 3-man turret.
Okay.
So you
Okay.
expand actually out the diameter of the turret itself. So
Okay.
if
So
you
that's
watch the development of tanks, you watch the internal turret get bigger.
yes. That's
At
what
a
I was
certain
going to
point.
say. I do remember that. I do remember the turret size growing as the tanks progressed. I do remember that.
Yeah. So you basically move the gunner up
Okay.
into the turret.
Interesting.
It was it was quite the development actually, because it allowed them to keep four people in the tank.
There was
And
one
aside-
tank that the Germans used that the only area of vulnerability was underneath. So when they were targeting it, they would try to aim underneath it and get the bomb to bounce up. I was just learning about that recently. I forget I don't know which tank it was.
Tanker 4s were about the only thing. That's about the only place you could hit them.
With the Shermans, the American tanks, and tell me if I'm wrong, they had to have a specific strategy on how to knock out a lot of the German tanks because of the heavy armament of the German tanks, as well as the relatively weak weak guns on the Sherman in comparison.
Oh.
Well, I think did the 4s not have skirts yet? Did they, or was it the 3s that didn't have skirts?
I think it was the 3s that didn't have skirts, and skirts are just extra armor, basically, that
sit over the tracks.
Right, that sit over the tracks.
that was the main thing that you would do is you would try to flank and then you would just hit the tracks and knock the tracks, because once you knock the tracks off, your tank is useless.
So that's another interesting thing about
the 3s had them. The 2s did not have them. Wait, no, hold on. What am I?
Well, they would have been added later on for the 3s.
Yeah.
Skirts didn't come out till mid-war.
Right, and that's one of the interesting things about weapon development or about technology development is that you discover what you need while you're in the middle of a fight, right? And then
there was an actual science developed called on-battlefield modification. So they would actually have scrap armor that would come up after a battle, and they would be like, okay, what just happened? How can we add armor to whatever we got in such a way that we don't add too much weight, but we're protecting the vital areas that we see them trying to go for?
Oh, okay. So they'd literally do battlefield modifications.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then they
That
would
must have been fun.
if it was successful, they would report back, and then they would modify the manufacturing of the tank itself. Everyone did this. This is German, Russian, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. PZK FWG 3H head skirts.
Panzerkampfwagen 3, the Model H, which was the not 8th in development. So, yeah, all of our equipment sucked. The Bradley sucked because it sat up too high. The P-51 was an okay airplane. The only thing that made it great was that we had 1 million of them.
Yep.
And the advent and usage of wing fuel tanks.
We did the same thing to the Japanese.
Yeah.
We just started producing cheap little carriers, just swarm them.
Well,
we had more carriers in production at the end of the war than Japan had in production or in service combined throughout the entire war.
The Japanese were aware that they were going to be outproduced by us. They were. Who was it? Yamamoto. He was actually over here.
Give me 6 months.
Yeah. That's the Japanese plan was the war had to be over in 6 months or they were going to lose.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the interesting thing. I don't think in terms of big pictures, both Germany and Japan were desperate countries in the sense that they knew that they had timelines, and if they didn't act within a certain window, they wouldn't be able to achieve their goals at all.
Well, the entire reason Japan attacked us is because we had the Philippines and we were in their way of attacking the oil fields of Indonesia.
Exactly.
And then embargoed them on top of that, which caused them to go, okay, we got 3 months of oil left.
A lot of people don't realize that World War II in the Pacific specifically, and you can make this an argument too for Germany, is an oil war.
Oh, yeah. It's a resource war.
It's a resource war, but the Japanese fleet could not keep going without oil. the Germans couldn't keep their army going without oil, and so they were going for.
Oh yeah. As my grandfather will tell you, as he flew over and dropped bombs on this particular location, Ploesti was
in Romania. Yeah.
Was Ploesti was the main center of German production because all the oil fields in Romania, and it was my grandfather was stationed in Foggia, Italy, 1943-44, and I think 4 of his bomb runs were to Ploesti, and his after-action reports stated that the only place that had more anti-aircraft guns than Berlin was Ploesti.
It makes sense.
Yep. Germany was trying to persuade Mexico to join the Axis and declare war on the U.S.
It didn't work the First World War. Why do you think it would work in the second one?
Yeah, well, that's we didn't intercept the actual request that they should declare war on us, but we did intercept the reply from the Mexican president, which basically translated to, "Are you fucking nuts?"
Yeah.
We already lost once to these fuckers.
Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind? Anyone get that reference, that movie reference? No? Okay, I'll go fuck myself.
But yeah, I mean...
Yeah, be an adult. Oh, sorry.
The logical insanity that was the tactics used in World War II, especially the air war, just baffles the mind. Because it's barbaric by today's standards, obviously. Carpet bombing, firebombing, the way that we firebombed, they're all war crimes today.
Yeah.
They were probably war crimes back then, but they were still trying to develop the tactics and technology to do it. I mean, the Norden bomb site was promising them to be able to hit a 500 kilogram bomb from 12,000 feet to hit a pickle barrel. What they found out is they might get it within 12 miles of where your target was.
There was an awareness amongst the Air Corps here in the States that, and I forget who was in charge of it, but there was this conversation about, well, you know, if we lose the war, we're going to be the war criminals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's everything. Yeah, and that was after the Tokyo firebombing raid.
Yeah,
is that if we lose this, we'll be the ones hanging for war crimes. And I can't remember his name either, and I can see his face too.
Yeah,
because he's got a baby face. But yeah, so it's like the worst rumor out there that you cannot combat is the whole Dresden happening after the end of the war, which did not. Dresden was bombed in February. The end of the war was in April. Correct people when they pull that BS out.
I've never heard
that went clear up to the H3H3 podcast and was not contested, and people started to believe it.
Dude, that's 101 stuff. That's 101 stuff.
I hadn't heard that claim either.
But you know what we did? Oh, the other part about Dresden is that it wasn't a military target; it was a completely civilian target. And then if you go back to the bomb map of what they were going for, it was all ball bearing factories. Which is basically you need for every machine that you're using in the war. It was so much so that I think that factory actually didn't exist anymore. They had moved it underground, but the Allies didn't know that.
Yep. You can't have any kind of vehicle rolling without ball bearings.
So I'm looking at the Wikipedia article, so please forgive me, but it says that General Henry H. Arnold headed the American Air Force, which was part of the Army, I guess, back in World War II.
Yeah, but who was Strategic Bomb Command?
Strategically, yeah. I'm not sure.
I believe there were certain factories that we were told not to bomb because we wanted to make use of their technology after the war.
That was all in northern Germany, and that was the rocket, the V2 stuff.
Yep.
Lots of balls, Ox. Lots of balls.
I don't know if any of you saw this story. They were talking about doing a space hotel. I was reading about this. I think it was a couple of days ago, maybe a week or two ago, And the name of the space hotel that they would hope to be done by 2030, I think, would be called Von Braun.
Of course it would.
Is
I
that
think
the
that's a
name
pretty
of
cheeky
it?
name. That's a cheeky name.
Oh, so if you go to strategic bombing during World War II, their picture of Ploesti is the 15th Air Force B-24s flying through the flak. One of those is probably my grandfather's plane.
The thing is, even when that oil field was operating, Germany was running at such a deficit in terms of oil production, they were in deep trouble.
Mm-hmm. Well, the problem with Germany is they never invested into heavy bombing. Every single bomber that they had was medium or less.
Yeah. Well, they were always, the German/Prussian, right, way of war was always do these short campaigns to win quickly, and the idea about long range bombers, it wasn't anything they had really contemplated a whole lot.
Curtis LeMay.
There you go.
They didn't need a long range bomber. There was no technological way they're going to be able to build a bomber long range enough to reach.
It wasn't longer range; it was payload.
But they're not going to reach the States with anything.
Well, it's not the fact that they couldn't reach the States; it's that they couldn't carry enough payload to actually make London suffer.
I mean, you can talk about what the problem was with the German air campaign during the Battle of Britain, because as I understand it, their original goal was to attack the RAF directly.
Yeah.
Attack the airfields, attack the production centers, and it wasn't until the Brits were able to bomb Berlin itself that it was we need to have revenge and go after the civilians.
Well, okay, so there's a story behind this, is that so some bombers got lost on a night raid, and they were actually going to bomb a legitimate military target, and they accidentally bombed a residential area in London, killed 12 people.
Right.
They could hit Berlin at the time, and then you read about the 1940 bombing of Berlin, where what's his face? Hermann Goering said, if the bombs ever fall in Berlin, you can call me Meyer.
Yeah.
And after that, everybody in the upper echelons of the Luftwaffe called him Meyer because of his proclamation that Berlin was untouchable.
Yeah.
But then RAF bombed Berlin, and then as in retaliation, Hitler went, for every bomb that falls on Berlin, 1,000 will fall on, London. And so that was this whole change, except for and people will be like, oh, well, they had the RAF on the run. Well, they really didn't. And the reason is Luftwaffe lied a lot about how many they shot down. Number one. Number two, when you're defending your territory and you get shot down, a parachute means you can get that pilot right back up in the air. When a 109 went down, that pilot was lost. So, a German pilot would go over the channel, fight over England, get shot down. They're out of the war, unless they can somehow escape and swim across the channel.
Right.
So you've got this dynamic.
Wasn't there a story of German prisoners of war who stole a plane to fly back to Germany?
That wouldn't surprise me.
I just learned about this recently, and I didn't have enough time to tap into it.
The other favorite story is in Ireland. They were so neutral that if either side was found in Ireland, they arrested them both, and they kept them in the same POW camps. So Germans, Americans, and England or British guys were all in the same internment camps in Ireland.
Tell me if this is myth or not. I heard the story that there would be in the Irish Republic, there would be bonfires lit to direct German bombers in the direction of London. And it wasn't until the Brits told them to cut the crap, and that's when it stopped.
That sounds like a cheeky rumor that Brits would tell to drum up hate for the Irish.
Right.
That's exactly.
Are you sure that's not the propaganda Gurganot?
That sounds like a tanky CIA propaganda.
Right.
No, it wouldn't. You know, if it happened once, I would probably be like, yeah, it was probably some Irish people that really hated the Brits, that really wanted, to be like to this to be the middle finger towards the bigger island.
So here it is from the Irish Times. I actually just Googled it to tell you the truth because I'm now curious about it. Unionists blamed the South for not blacking out on the night of the bombing in 1941. All right, so that's something totally different. I'm sorry, I'm just being distracting right now.
You got to remember, too, that any news articles you find in 40, 41 through 45 are incredibly scrubbed and incredibly propagandistic. If you think Goebbels was a good propaganda artist, you should read up how the guys worked in Britain. They were masters at it, just like the United States and Japan. They had their own propaganda ministries. They just didn't call them that.
I'll be right back. Pardon me.
Well, that's
Sure.
a lot of this crap going on now about Dr. Seuss. A lot of the things they're pulling up to show that he was racist were actually that he worked for the U.S. Army creating propaganda.
Oh yeah,
the U.S.
America
government
First
was
cartoon.
paying him to make the Japanese look stupid.
Well, that and the America First cartoons that came out in the 1930s.
Well, that's what I was about to. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
To make fun of the America First movement and to show its basically Siamese twin relation
Yeah.
with the Nazi movement.
Yeah, and that's the thing is a lot of people need to understand. Okay, first of all, yes, some of his shit was pretty racist. Okay, it is. But also a lot of that's the stuff that they're banning. Almost all of it was between 1937 and 1953 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a whole different ball of wax back then.
Yeah.
The shit on TV was racist too. Everything was racist back then.
Yeah. We're
think
also
there's a
talking
difference-
about a man who was born more
think-
than 100 years ago.
From what I understand,
Between it being okay and understanding the times. Like it's never okay to do right what he did, but we can at least understand the era that it came out of.
Well,
Right. That's exactly
from what I understand though, and like this might not be true, so take this with a grain of salt, but I heard something that he like stated later on in his life that his racist imagery like upset him and that he doesn't stand by it anymore. I don't know if that was like just some like bullshit that someone wrote to make Dr. Seuss not problematic, but I don't
know whether or not he ever made the statement, but if you look at his later works, it did reverse a lot of that.
Yes, Kitty, you're absolutely right. The company itself, who owns all the rights to all the Dr. Seuss material, did decide to do it. You're right. No one bitched. Yep. No one went after the company and sued them. They just realized that there was some fucked up shit there.
Yeah,
which
it wasn't an issue.
I'm totally okay with it. They didn't take all the good books out. They didn't kill the whole company. And like someone said on, I think it was Twitter, you're still going to be able to find those books out there. They're just going to quit producing them. So
I don't see anything about him recanting about his imagery. I mean, Dr. Seuss was a pretty terrible person.
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing wasn't an issue until the company decided that, these didn't age so well, we're not going to print them. And then Fox picked it up to be something horrible.
Well, what it is, it's typical Republican distraction from whatever's going on, whatever they don't want you to pay attention to. Fox News, the Republicans are very good about distracting the American public with culture war materials and energy.
They don't want you to know that they voted against you getting help.
Well, that's exactly it. And so we'll just throw up this bogus culture war issue to distract people.
Well, my brother would say to you that the whole entire Trump administration was a distraction.
From the list,
Trump was a distraction. Well, we don't know yet, but we'll find out soon. I'm sure COVID was part of it.
Well, I think actually the Republicans' original plan was to have Trump as a distraction. That's why they ran a clown. But I think they got more than they bargained for.
Oh, I agree with that statement. They had no idea what they were doing.
One thing that I've noticed is the less important a news story on Fox News is, the more important something else is going on in this country.
Yeah.
For example, like this whole I'm not entirely convinced that this whole Dr. Seuss bullshit and the right wingers freaking out about this isn't to cover up the fact that no Republican voted for like the most bipartisan COVID relief bill ever.
Mhm.
You know, so like they'll do anything just to make sure. Wow. I have a headache. I'm sorry. I just lost my train of thought instantaneously.
That's okay. Just take a break for a minute.
Yeah, there'll be another train leaving in a few minutes.
Yes. Plenty of trains.
I mean, it's partly that, but it's also partly the 24-hour news cycle. They always got to have something to talk about.
Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah, sometimes they just have to fill airtime when there isn't a story, so they have to create one.
Yeah, that takes us into the politics of the war, which Mr. Andy over there was starting to rant on about yesterday morning.
Yep.
The politics behind the war.
How far do you want to go back? Do you want to go back to 1923?
The putsch. We go back to the putsch. We could do anything. We could do anything.
Literally, I don't care.
I mean, the putsch was a stunt that actually helped them.
Well, yes, it worked. Well, okay, so let's explain what the putsch was.
Yes, please.
So the putsch was a 1923 in Munich. It's called the Beer Hall Putsch, as I understand it.
Yep.
It was an attempt to do a good oldie-fashioned, yes, I said that, oldie-fashioned, OLDE fashioned coup. You would take the basic, the railway centers, the mail center, the post office, and they were hoping to take over the whole country. It was an unrealistic plan, to say the least. And they all got together. A lot of the National Socialists, the Nazis, got together. A couple of big speeches. They started marching down the city, and they got shot on. They got shot at.
So 7 of them were killed?
Yep. I don't know the exact number. I mean, they were not messing around. The police were not messing around.
But if you go back to the politics at the time, you understand that there were regular riots, demonstrations, communists versus nationalists versus socialists versus soc dems. The Weimar Republic was not stable.
It wasn't stable, but it did remark. And I'm going to put this position. I'm going to take this position, and it's going to be a radical position. The Weimar Republic did a good job under the circumstances.
Oh yeah,
they did a good job because they had to go. At the end of World War I, the Germans had to pay. They had to pay a lot of money over years and years and years to the Allies for war indemnities. So they had that huge issue.
Which was a mistake on the Allies' side.
It was a complete mistake because you want a happy and stable country right there in the center of Europe, and you want to make them as democratic as humanly possible. And you could blame the French. Should we blame the French for
English?
Okay, yeah. Woodrow Wilson, not a perfect human being by any extent. He was not, as I understand it, he was not for such a punishing treatment for Germany.
No, because his 14 points were definitely not against Germany.
Right. So basically the French, and because the French also suffered quite a bit too from the Franco-Prussian War back in 1871. The Germans made them shell out a lot of money too after that conflict. So there was many people in France thought, well, this is our time to get ours back, and just put all these punishing restrictions on Germany after the end of World War I. And that really set up the situation for World War II, because it crippled the Republic, the Weimar Republic, the state that was in between World War I and World War II.
Very much so. It was to the point where it was, well, and we all hear about the hyperinflation of Germany in the 20s and 30s and the issues that brought along with that, printing money to just pay off debt. But there was also so many other issues that went along with it. They lost their entire gold reserve.
Yeah.
They lost the Ruhr Valley and the Rhine. And basically the French occupied it and were stealing all of the resources out of it to use as payment. And so you have an occupying force on your territory, which breeds resentment. I mean, you want to build a nationalistic sense of resentment against a foreign occupying force, do it that way.
Well, Germany was left with no way to have a functioning economy.
Yeah. The entire industrial base of Germany is the western borders.
You could make an argument that if it wasn't for the Great Depression, then the Weimar Republic would have found a way.
Yeah.
They would have found a way. But it was the Great Depression which just
Hitler lost all his popularity in 27, 28, and 29. And then 29 hit.
Yep.
But the other side is that entire prosperity was built on American debt.
Talk about that.
Debt to Germany, debt paid to Germany from Americans who took Weimar Republic, bonds. And so the value of the mark was supported by it's pegged against the dollar at that point in time. And then when the depression happened, that pegging went away, and so you had the mass inflation and everything else. But also the fact that the most of the funding came from American bond buyers, sovereign debt buyers.
Sure.
So it was debt fueled. I don't think it was actually. But again, how could you fuel it any other way when you have France occupying the entire western border of Germany, which is the entire industrial center? I mean, just go look at a map right now of the entire western side of Germany, and you can see all the rivers, all the navigable rivers, and all of the coal and all of the iron reserves and everything else, right? And
just to get back to the putsch, is that so this is the backdrop of what happened of the situation in Germany. So 1923. Hitler, they do this aborted coup, this coup that didn't work out. How long was he in jail for? It was a year. So he wasn't in jail for a long time. He got a slap on the wrist, comparatively. And he
was sympathetic to him.
And he got to write a book.
Penned by Rudolf Hess.
Penned by Rudolf Hess. That's right. Who would later fly off to England, or was it Scotland? Scotland.
To the Earl of Scotland, one of the Earls of Scotland.
Yeah. So that's when Hitler was in prison, he wrote Mein Kampf, and
his roommate was Rudolf Hess, who basically ran the typewriter while Adolf spoke.
Yeah,
that's why if you read Mein Kampf, it sounds like somebody's talking to you.
Oh, so the whole thing was dictated.
Yep.
So after the putsch, there was a strategic decision to try to win power via legitimate or via the system, by the political system, as against to doing a violent revolution like the Bolsheviks did in Russia. And
it failed up until the Depression, because life actually got pretty good in Germany.
That's right. Things were going well, and then the Depression hit, and things went sideways.
In which, in 1933, the election happened. The Nazi Party got 31% of the vote in seats in the.
It was not a majority. It was not a majority. I believe the conservatives thought that they could control him, and that's why they agreed for him to become chancellor.
Yeah, well, yeah, because the what's his face, Heisenberg, or not Heisenberg, Hindenburg said we basically need a thumb on top of him, and I can be the thumb. Problem was that he was like 950 years old.
That dude was ancient. That dude, if someone
made Methuselah look young.
It's like if someone in the room would have been like, "Dude, have you looked in the mirror? You are old. Have you looked at this other guy? He's insane. You're gonna be sharing a government. You're gonna be in a steel cage with this dude, and you're telling me that you can control him." That's just unrealistic right there.
And then when Hindenburg's mind was going, he convinced Hindenburg to sign over the chancellorship and the presidency into the same office.
Well, that's the nature of accruing a power, right? Because that's what all despots want to do. All would-be despots. They want to accrue as much power into the office that they're holding. So you combine powers. So now you can do practically anything.
Now I want to mention that where did Hitler learn this from? Because it's an amazing story. Learned it from Joseph Stalin because the general secretary of the Communist Party was a nothing position before Stalin took it. And then Stalin took it, and he consolidated so many different powers into the office of the general secretary that all of a sudden the general secretary became the ruling man of the Communist Party. So he basically took, they learned so much from each other.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
interesting. It's interesting is that, before they started killing each other, in the interwar period, there was a fair amount, as I recall, there was a fair amount of the Weimar weapon development and training going on in Russia, so that the Allies wouldn't know what was going on. So the Soviets are like, yeah, come on over. We'll let you develop your weapons and try things out over here. That's a little twist of irony, right?
Well, at the beginning of war, Russia and Germany were allies, right?
No, they were non-aggression pacts.
Non-aggression pact.
But functionally, Germany was getting a majority of its raw materials from Russia during the interwar period, and even up until the time of the German invasion. So even though they officially had a non-aggression pact, they were still They were still a lot of working together on different.
But if you want to look it up, it's called the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, and
I don't think Stalin ever believed that Hitler was going to be genuine with the non-aggression pact. I think he just signed it to buy time.
Well, okay, so you have to look at what was going on in Russia at the time and why would Stalin do this? Well, he purged his entire army corps with the show trials in 1936, 1937, 1938, and even a little bit later, and then he purged the Air Force, and then he purged the Navy on top of that.
Yeah.
So he had probably killed half of his officers and sent the other half to the gulag. And so he needed to buy time for new people, NCOs, and everything else to come up through the ranks and start to take their positions, loyalists, if you will. Which is why at the start of Barbarossa, nobody knew what the fuck to do because there were no officers.
Yeah.
There was nobody commanding. It was like a lieutenant being your Joint Chiefs of Staff. It was crazy.
You could see how bad it was during the Winter War between Finland and Russia.
Oh yeah.
There was a whole other conflict between Russia and Finland before the Germans attacked Russia, and the Russians got a bloody nose in the whole conflict.
But yeah, Theo, that was the other part of it, was they came together and said, hey, look, if we take Poland in concession, you guys can take that half and we'll take this half. And and also we're going to take these other parts. Oh, and we're going to force Romania to give back a portion of their country back to you as well, which made the Romanians very unhappy. But then Hitler looked at them and said, shut up. Yeah, I mean, there were so many aspects to the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact that it's just crazy to think that it actually worked, because it had to take other sovereign nations to agree to what was going on that were not part of the pact at all.
Well, no, it was like the Munich conference, right? The Munich conference. Yeah. So the Munich conference basically gave Germany a bit of Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia wasn't at the conference. So
that's what happens when you don't show up.
Well, no, they weren't invited. They were not invited because they were not strong enough. They were not powerful enough, and they just weren't needed. So the Brits, the French, the Italians, and they all just decided the fate of this slice of Czechoslovakia, the most defendable part of Czechoslovakia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you look at the terrain, Germany invading that part of Czechoslovakia with stiff resistance, it would have gone nowhere.
Yeah. So it was the most defensible part of the country. They just gave it to the Germans.
It had a bunch of fortifications, reinforced concrete. It had bunkers. It had supply lines. It had an armed populace that wouldn't have taken shit. Now, there were some German loyalists in there that may have muddied things up a little bit, but not to the point that... Yeah, if France would have stood up and said, okay, we'll walk across the border and Czechoslovakia and us.
It's difficult to really oversell the French badness, the French
Leadership.
leadership. Because, okay, so imagine this. Germany is throwing most of its divisions, most of its army, most of its air force on the other side of its country. It's on its east to invade Poland. Meanwhile, you have already officially, if you're France, you have officially declared war on Germany. And you have more guys, you have more soldiers, you have more tanks, you have more everything on
And
that
a better reputation.
What's that?
And a better reputation.
Better reputation, and they just sit. They just sit.
Yep. What was it called? Folkrieg or Sitzkrieg?
Sitzkrieg. It's the fake war there, right? It's the fake war. Yeah, it does boggle the brain that they could have just like walked through it. Yeah, there would have been some fighting, right?
Yeah.
But
there were like 4 divisions along the entire border. That's it.
I'm not entirely not convinced that Hitler didn't just roll nat 20s every time he made a decision.
Well, the fact of the matter is that may be true for like he got lucky until 1941, and then he made the biggest blunder of all. On December 8th, he declared war on the United States. He didn't need to.
He saw. I mean, if you know, he just thought he was already at war with the U.S. anyway in the North Atlantic. So why not declare war officially? I know it was a bad idea, but
so the other thing was the politics of naval strength and the funding of the Bismarck and the Tirpitz basically bankrupted the submarine program, which is what they needed to be funding.
I don't understand. Yeah, it was such an. People shouldn't assume that the Nazis and the German economy was competent, or you know, like as you said, it's like they could have just put it into submarine development. There was only I don't even know how many U-boats they started off at the beginning of the war, but it was
36.
And there were a lot of higher ups in the German Navy who were arguing against this, who were saying that we can't win with battleships because there's no way we can match the British fleet. We've got to do something they don't have.
Well, and Germans actually were the ones who figured out that aircraft carriers were going to be the ones that win the war. And they actually started development of one before they figured out that they could never get one out of Denmark, basically.
Yeah.
And so
they were building the Graf Zeppelin, and they eventually gave up on it. And the catapults they had built for it got sent to Italy to be put aboard the carrier Aquila that the Italians never managed to launch in time.
But the goal actually by the German naval command was that they needed 300 submarines. They had 10% of what they needed.
You know, and that it brings up an interesting point, is that the German economy as well as the German military comparatively against its foes were in much better position in World War I than they were in World War II.
Oh yeah. They had much more land. They had much more. Silesia itself could almost feed, half of Germany.
Yeah.
And plus, the Russians were just bungling everything. The Austrians and the Italians were deadlocked in the Alps, so that wasn't going to move anywhere. The Serbians gave up enough resistance to make a mockery of the Austrians, and then folded just due to numbers.
Yeah. On the other hand,
real quick, Jenny's gonna have to go. Jenny, thank you for coming in, honey. I appreciate you.
I'm glad I came. You guys are really smart, and I have absolutely zero to contribute. So I'm just gonna take off.
Well, I wasn't gonna say that, but
well, you can just sit there and look pretty. You're good at that.
No, I'm not very good at that either.
Oh yeah, you are.
Have a good night, honey. Thanks for coming.
Good night.
Good night, Jen.
She's my Zipper Club sister.
Well, another German vehicle that
she is.
Pretty much everyone is familiar with, the Vw Beetle, was actually designed based on SS specifications because they wanted a cheap-to-produce and cheap-to-run staff car. So it was designed specifically to hold one officer and a driver.
And then later on, the Volkswagen became the family car of Germany.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. What do you think Volkswagen means?
Yep.
The people's car.
The people's
car was reproduced in America.
Yep.
If you
Yep,
remember
well,
the
it-
thing,
Yeah, the thing. Yep.
the
The thing.
The
VW
thing was
thing.
actually a German Jeep.
The first car
Yeah.
I drove was a 1968. Showing my age here. A 1968 Volkswagen Bug. It was my dad's car, and it was semi-automatic, so I had a shift, but there wasn't any clutch. And oh my god, I loved that thing. It was great.
Nice.
Well, and the Beetle was called the people's car because what they sold it on was that the people would work in the factory, and after like 5 years labor in the factory, they would get a car.
Yeah.
They never delivered a single car to any of the workers, but
No,
that was
they
the
were
plan they
cool.
sold everyone on.
Yeah.
Almost
Yeah.
like it was a scam.
Yep. And fun fact, by the way, for anybody who's not owned a Volkswagen, I used to, me and my ex had a 74 Volkswagen bus. You can actually put a Porsche motor into the Volkswagens.
You want to know why?
They are compatible.
You
And
want
then
to
you
know
have
insane.
one hell of a powerful Volkswagen.
Do you know why?
No, I do not know why.
Because Volkswagen owns Porsche.
There you go.
Well, there you go, folks.
I
See, now
drive
you
an
know I'm not
Audi.
lying.
I drive an Audi, and Audi is owned by Volkswagen.
Yes.
Yeah, I
that's
just
true.
remember
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And
my
like-
foster brother had a Volkswagen Beetle, and when my mother borrowed it, she could never find reverse.
Oh, my mother could never
So
find it
every
first
time we
either.
went out to the store, I literally had to push the car back out of the parking space so that she could put it into drive.
I thought my mom was the only mom that had to have that. She could never find reverse either.
But yeah, Ducati is also owned by Volkswagen. 20% of Lamborghini. But yeah, the original car company was the three rings of the Audi logo, and that would symbolize the four companies that were merged to come into play to become the new Volkswagen company. But yeah.
Yeah, as Ox said, that we also got Fanta soda from that because during the embargoes on Germany, the Coca-Cola company could not ship the syrup there. So the factories that used to make Coca-Cola had to find something else to flavor the soda.
Orange rinds.
Hey, Fanta is
BMWs.
pretty good, but
I drive a BMW, but I know how to use a turn signal.
Nice. Good for you.
shut the front door, do you? I thought
Yeah,
that's why on all the fancy cars they put it on the mirror, so that way the driver knew which way they were supposed to be going after they turned it on. Yeah, okay.
No, I said I would drive a BMW, but I know how to.
Oh, yeah.
That's
no,
why I
yeah,
drive an
Jenny
Audi.
leave just before we started talking BMWs. That's her main thing.
Theo said
well,
in
we'll
the
be
chat
off the
that-
subject in a minute, anyways. But BMW drivers and Saab drivers, they don't. Lexus, all those guys, you don't have to use the turn signal.
Audi,
It's
we
okay.
do.
No, it's fine. You just go wherever you want, and people move out of your way.
Oh, and Fanta,
Also, Ford pickup trucks.
Kitty, Fanta was a Nazi invention. Fanta, the soda pop,
Yeah,
was a Nazi
Yeah.
invention.
yeah, that's what.
I
I
have-
have,
I
I have
saying
read that. Yes.
Is that the reason why it figures so prominently in The Boys' second season? I don't know if anyone's seen The Boys.
I haven't started the second season yet, so.
All
Yeah, I
right,
never watched that.
No spoilers here from Andy.
And then the famous clothing designer Hugo Boss designed the SS uniforms.
That's why they're so on point.
Yeah. They're terrible people, but man, they dress well.
Yeah, you have to give that to the Nazis. They were stylish.
Even the Stahlhelm looked good.
Hold on, Jetty. Let me
Yeah.
click on the right
Yes,
one.
that-
We're gonna use the first signal because what's behind us does not matter.
All right. I don't know if anyone's ever seen the Mitchell and Webb show. You have it's a hilarious British show. They're the two comedians. They're in World War II in a bunker. They're both Nazis.
Are we the baddies?
Are we the baddies? It's like, have you noticed that we have the skull and crossbones here?
Oh, because they were part of the SS unit known as the Death's Head,
Right. And
which has a longer history behind it, which is not racist.
I understand that, but for the sake of the joke. So one of them goes, I just noticed this on our caps. It's a skull and crossbones. It turns out, are we the baddies?
So
where it comes from is known as in the 1800s, the Prussian army had a division known as the Death's Head Hussars, and they were the elite corps of hussars, which were heavy cavalry that were basically developed to counter the Winged Hussars that came out of Poland, and then also the cuirassiers that came out of France. And so they were basically either you were going to retire, so you got kind of a Death's Head Hussar uniform and shoved out to pasture, or you were a member of the most elite cavalry corps known to man at the time. So while yes, an SS uniform with a skull and crossbones seems fitting, its origination actually comes from a much cooler, less racist.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe the origins of all the Nazi symbolisms had very innocuous origins, including the Bellamy salute. That was the right hand thing that extended Heil Hitler thing.
Yeah.
I just want to.
That was supposed to be like an.
So earlier, the Nazi Navy was mentioned, and I just wanted to bring this up because this is my favorite piece of Nazi hardware. That's not a good sentence to say. That's bad optics. You know what I mean. So this is the GM44 gas mask. It was a naval boarding gas mask, and it was specifically designed to scare the shit out of people. I want one of these so bad, but there were so few ever made, and barely any of them has ever survived. So it's like couple grand just for like a broken one. So one in good condition is pretty hard to find, and many of them don't have the binoculars. But yeah, this is just an interesting naval.
That is as steampunk as it gets.
Yeah, I mean, it was designed to just look scary as fuck, and I love it.
That's my favorite army corps throughout all of history is the Winged Hussars, just because of what the wings were supposed to represent and everything, and how they were designed to create a whirling noise and seem bigger, and those were cool. So if you ever have a chance to watch the movie that has the final charge of the Winged Hussars, it's pretty good. If you only watch it for that, otherwise the rest of the movie's crap.
Just that one part, though.
Just that one part, because I think it's the largest cavalry charge in history. It was something like 8,000 head charging down the mountainside.
Oh, damn.
Wow.
That slammed into a disorganized Ottoman Turk army that was besieging Vienna.
In 16 something? Was that
1647? 43?
Yeah.
Something like that. Bill and Ted's Nazi Adventure.
That's how you know Mice is in the chat, when you get something like that.
How many of Mice are in the chat? Because we got Google Eats.
Oh, tons of them. Tons of them.
He's got 9 different personalities that he uses.
I looked at the Winged Hussars to confirm that it was what I was thinking of. I'll share this with the audience just so that they have a understanding. Yeah.
Hold on, let me grab that for you.
I love this design for an outfit. It's so great. It's so unnecessary, but so great.
Now they have whirlers on them too that would make noise.
Wow.
I can just hear Flight of the Valkyries going through my head.
I mean, I just feel like there was some shit stolen from natives for that. I'm just saying.
No. Well, it's Poland.
No.
So.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, so very cool.
Yeah, it predates the World Wars, but both sides of my family are in America because of the Russians.
That was cool.
My mom's side is Finnish and my father's side is Polish. So both of them wound up coming here because Russia tried to move the borders.
And succeeded.
Yeah.
Tried. Yeah.
Yeah, Finland, they moved the border back 200 miles, so everybody decided to take whatever they could carry and burn the town to the ground. They said the Russians can take the land, but they're not going to get anything else.
A reasonable course of action.
They took the land and the 3 iron mines, which is why they actually wanted that land.
Yeah.
Hi, Randy.
Which is ironic because my grandfather wound up coming to the U.S. to be an iron miner in Michigan.
Yeah, we got a lot of that here, and copper, stuff like that, steel. But, we got the Great Lakes, too, so there's just, you see them big old boats going by all the damn time, just chucked right full of stuff.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's a fact.
Not as much of it as there were in decades past, but was quite a bit.
Yeah,
The area I was living in, Upper Michigan, it was an old mining town, but the last mines had closed in the 80s.
Okay, so the Focke-Wulf 190, it was quite possibly either that or the Yak 9 were the best fighters in the war, bar none. The Focke-Wulf was fucking fantastic. The problem was they couldn't make enough of them in time.
Yeah, but the power to weight ratio of those engines was definitely impressive.
And the other problem is by the time the Focke-Wulf came out, most of the great pilots of the German Air Force were killed.
Gone. Yeah.
Oh, that sucks.
Yep.
Those names
Japan
sound
had-
like
Let's take
drunken
this guy.
Norwegian
The good
fat
ones are
dudes.
dead. Let's use this guy to fly this one.
Well, Japan had the same problem because if somebody was a good pilot, they put him on a frontline carrier.
Yeah,
The
and
U.S.
the other,
took the opposite approach, that if somebody was an excellent pilot, they pulled him out of combat and made him a training instructor.
yeah, and the other thing that they tried to do was to go to POW camps for downed bomber and fighter pilots and try to get them to fly 109s for Germany.
You're like, fuck you. I'd take it up and just nosedive it. Fuck you, man.
Or I'd drop down to 100 feet and try to escape to Allied territory.
Yeah, something, right.
But yeah, it was desperation of we'll put you up and you've got to but the problem was you'd go up there and you would actually fight for your life because you were in a 109 and American people didn't know that you were in that plane. And not to shoot at you. So
see, that's what I'm saying is if you didn't do it, they'd probably kill you. If you do it, you're probably going to die. I just go right into like a field and just get it over with.
Yeah. Well, that's why I say drop to 100
with me.
feet. Drop to 100 feet and try to land in a field right across the line.
Run like a bitch.
Yep. And I try to leave it intact so people so that
Snoopy
the
had the right
Allies
idea.
could have a good copy of the 109. Because we couldn't beat the Zero until we found a downed one that washed up shore in the Aleutian Islands. And we found out that the Zero could not dive in a certain way. It was like a negative G dive would actually plug up their carburetor or something and cause it to stall out. And so that was the tactic that the F4Fs used to gain advantage. And then when the F6f Hellcat came out, was it the Hellcat or it was the Hellcat because the Bearcat was the F4F.
The Zero still had a carburetor that required on somewhat of a gravity feed.
Yeah.
So if
it was the same
nose,
problem with the Spitfire.
if the nose exceeded too far of an angle down, the fuel stopped getting into the carburetor.
Right, and that's the Spitfire's problem too, as I understand it.
Yep.
I also think, this is just from what I heard, from what I understand about the Zero's development, is that they didn't have a bladder for their gas tank.
Oh, that too. That was the other one. Was here's the other.
Wasn't
problem.
it after that they come up with the diaphragm carburetors?
So let me just talk about the bladder and the
anything at any angle.
Because this is a major flaw of the Zero's design, is that there's a lot. Picture a gas tank, and the fuel gets lower and lower and lower. So even as the liquid gets lower, there's still gas fumes in the tank. A bullet goes through that gas tank, hits the fumes, and the whole thing lights up. Now, if there was a bladder system, so in other words, it would be some kind of rubberized bladder, so that as the liquid goes down, there are no gases that fill the gas tank, the rest of the tank.
Right.
So it goes. So if a bullet goes through that empty space, that's all it is. It's empty space.
Yeah,
Right.
and the coolest part about it was they were.
I assume the bladder is spring operated and not an air operated.
It was vacuum operated, self vacuum operated, and it would self seal. So if a bullet went through it, it would actually self repair itself, which sounds like ATM machine. But yeah, it would self repair. It was an amazing system that the English and the Germans and the Americans used, but the Japanese just it wasn't part of the other one was the amount of plating that behind the pilot seat was for Americans was a high priority. For Japanese it wasn't. Most Japanese pilots died because they got hit.
Yeah.
From my understanding, the Japanese didn't have a lot of great war machines compared to other nations at the time. Like their tanks are famously bad.
Yeah,
a lot
terrible.
And a lot of that I think stems from the fact that Japanese steel is terrible.
Well, there's another reason, and then I'll let you go.
All it takes is a big lizard to squash them.
Look at the terrain they were fighting in China. Tanks were impossible to use, so they didn't care.
But even so, like their priorities weren't on making, something like the Mauser, like the German super heavy tank, the heaviest tank ever built, right? They weren't trying to build like firepower. They're trying to build cheap shit that they can mass produce so that people can suicidally charge into battle in,
Yeah, they talk about the samurai mindset of, the Nodachi two-handed weapon that you attack. You attack, and you create a machine or a soldier in which they are meant to attack and never defend. And so that's the mindset they had of how they created their weapons of war.
I just like to bring something up. This stream's been on for like an hour and 20 minutes, and the only thing about history that's been discussed is weaponry.
Well, no, we
politics. They were discussing the politics of war.
Yeah, we started with the beer hall push.
We were talking about the beer hall, but yeah, we were doing things.
Although we were talking
What's
before
the war
about
without weapons?
And
Randy, I have to apologize.
Source war.
Randy, I have to apologize if this is very weapon centric. I don't know fuck all about history, but I do know a lot about killing people.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about how the Germans.
No apologies
weapons.
needed. I used to do it for a living.
Well,
I just can't remember much on purpose.
Under the treaty restrictions, and the Japanese came up with some very innovative ways to get things by that. There was actually a class of aircraft carrier the Japanese developed on paper, and then before they started building them, they had the designers take the flight deck off and rework them. So they were actually built as tankers with the idea that they could be converted back into aircraft carriers in less than 2 months.
Yeah, that was the Shokaku.
So there was a naval treaty which limited certain countries to have certain kinds of tonnage.
Two of them.
Yeah.
There was.
I have a question.
London naval treaty.
Two naval treaties.
Now earlier, everybody was talking about these hand weapons, and Germany was restricted from having more ammo in them and stuff like. Who restricted them, and why did they say, okay, go ahead and go to war anyways and do whatever the hell you want? But you know what? This one little handgun, you can only have so many bullets coming out of it. So who made those rules for Germany?
So it wasn't just handguns. I think it was the Treaty of Versailles that put the restriction.
Versailles.
I'm sorry. I'm like sick and my brain is dying, and I've had like 4 shots of vodka.
Gets it.
So
okay, so
yeah,
that's basically like a UN kind of thing, right? When they started that kind of shit.
At the end,
they got together.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, the navies were restricted by the Washington Treaty of 1922.
So I think
and that set number of ships and tonnage that each nation could have.
Oh, just so you guys all know, Randy's always on a little bit of a delay, so if he talks over you, he's not trying to be rude.
Oh no,
just
it's fine.
He has a little delay in there somewhere.
Right.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
I also
you're
lag
fine.
behind everyone
right
by a
there.
few seconds. So like people talk over me, and I get it because like my Wi-Fi is shit. So like I think some of the I can recall some of the restrictions placed on Germany after World War One. One of them was that they could only have, I think, 720 heavy machine guns and like a little over 1,000 submachine guns. They also couldn't manufacture any fully automatic weapons, which are considered any weapon that has an ammo capacity above 8 bullets and a certain fire rate. And a lot of these restrictions are what bred the innovation for getting around the like loopholes of the treaty, right?
Yeah, they couldn't manufacture tanks. They couldn't. They could only have 100,000 professional soldiers.
Yeah.
And how this was enforced was the fact that France was basically occupying 80% of the country.
80% of the industrial capacity of the country, right?
Oh shit! I just spilled energy drink everywhere, man.
Oh, that's gonna be sticky.
No, it's Bang. There's no sugar in it, thankfully.
Yeah, so that's why the German weapon development was, hidden by tractor development, let's say, or by commercial aircraft development, or done in or partially developed in Russia, so that which was on the blacklist of countries anyway because they were communist.
I don't think they could even have an air force, could they?
They couldn't have an official air force, but a lot of their development was done under the guise of commercial aircraft. So you saw a lot of commercial aircraft become military aircraft.
The Luftwaffe was originally trained in secret in Russia because they were not allowed to have any Air Force or Navy presence, I think. If I remember,
they were allowed to have certain 5 ships, and that was it. No submarines.
No submarines.
Submarine had development had to go underground, which it did. And they had 36 at the start of the war. And it was the second generation submarines. By the end of the war, they had a fully electric submarine that could actually produce its own oxygen and stay underwater for 2 months. Something absolutely. It was the Unterseebootenflottille 26.
Oh,
I think it was 2 months. I remember hearing something.
How the hell do you remember that?
Well, you just called it up. That's what. Type it away.
I'm a World War II junkie.
What is it that Mikey says? Oh, now you're just making words up.
Well, it's Unterseebooten is German submarine.
Everyone, I'm gonna have to run. This has been a lot of fun, but my girlfriend wants to see me, and so I'm gonna head off.
No, I know the rules.
Later,
Feminine
Andy.
wins.
Lucky
I
duck.
get it.
That's right.
Thanks for coming
nice
by,
meeting
Andy. I
you.
appreciate you.
Chief plug for my channel and my blog, Laughing in Disbelief. You can check me out. I do all kinds of stuff there.
Yep, Laughing in Disbelief. Yep. What is your Twitter handle? The Professor.
It's you can just find me at Laugh Purgatory.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, at Laugh Purgatory. So I'm on Twitter. I'm everywhere. But Laughing in Disbelief is where you can usually find me either on YouTube or my comedy blog. So
pretty much every morning around 7 a.m. Yep.
I always stream 9 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, and then I bounce around all over the place.
Great.
Oh,
thanks,
okay.
Andy. I appreciate you coming by, buddy.
It was
Take
nice
care.
meeting you.
Yeah. Nice meeting you all. Nice chatting.
Nice making your acquaintance.
Thank you.
and then there were
Nice
6.
man.
And then
5.5. I don't know shit. I'm just running the stream.
Me neither. I pretend a lot. I even got a hat to help me pretend.
A few more shots, and there will be 12 of you, according to me. I'm feeling a little buzzed. I'm feeling it.
Google Eats
Cheers,
is
Jen.
always on point. I tell you what.
I drink
That is
from
great.
here to here, so I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
your uppers and your downers all in one drink.
Yeah, and my mood stabilizers. Don't forget those.
Yep.
Ooh, goodness gracious! You should smoke some pot with that and do a line of coke.
I already smoked some pot earlier, so I'm halfway there. I can't do.
I
coke
call
no
my
more.
mood
It makes me
stabilizer Ming
paranoid,
Na
man.
Wen, and she does a hell of a massage.
Okay, if you can't do coke, try Fanta.
Hey, Swede, what will all that shit do to your heart? Not to
I-
yours, the common heart.
well, see,
Bad.
the problem is I don't actually have a heart disease. I have an aortic disease. So technically, I don't qualify to get my vaccine. As part as Group 1 because I don't have a heart disease. I have an aortic disease. So fuck the state of
Oh
Nebraska.
God.
That's such a
Semantics.
stupid technicality.
Yeah, technicality.
So they said I went and showed up, and then they sent me home saying, "No, you don't actually have a heart disease. You have an aortic disease."
But
Like-
it's
Yeah.
the same issue.
Well, like Sloth Girl
My
cannot
county
get
has
vaccine yet.
500.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
Sloth Girl
Purple.
can't get the vaccine yet because they're prioritizing it for people over 65. Despite the fact that she has MS, the medication for which gives her a compromised immune system.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Nebraska is 65 and up, teachers, and anyone that has cancer or heart disease is currently getting their shots. So, yeah,
I've heard a
battleship
few
talk is
medical
boring
individuals,
because
like-
the battleships had nothing to do
I
with
don't
World
know.
War II other than getting sunk.
You
They were
sunk
really
my
good at that.
battleship.
Yeah,
Did
not
you
too
say-
much. Although some
Well, like
of
I
them
was
were
saying,
interesting for the
my
way they were
grandfather,
sunk.
my
Go ahead,
grandfather
Randy.
on my mother's side and my two uncles on my father's side were all on the USS Wasp, and they left the day before Pearl Harbor,
Mhm.
with the big event, and they wound up in the Philippines, and they wound up getting into a battle. Oh, they claim they saw a flying saucer on the way there too, but that's separate. Anyways, they wound up getting sunk, and most of the crew there was lost out at sea for about 5 days. They lost about half their crew, I think, but the rest of them were. Luckily, my relatives survived, and they was all pretty much on the same raft.
Theo,
Because they all knew each
forgot-
other from the same hometown.
Theo, you forgot the Tirpitz.
Yeah, well, I was going to bring up the Tirpitz.
'Cause
As,
that's one of my favorite stories of how it got sunk because it basically sat in a little fjord in Norway for like ever, and they
Yep.
had to build anti-aircraft on the fjord that sat around the bay that it was sitting in, and it basically became just a floating bunker.
Yeah.
is all it was worth.
but yeah, the British,
So it was a
the
fjord
British knew
Pinto.
it was pretty much penned up, but they didn't want to take a chance of it coming out and raiding the convoys.
Hmm.
So they actually sent in a team of commandos in kayaks who
Mhm.
planted explosives on it and disabled it for 6 months.
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
good idea.
The story of the Bismarck too was basically the story of how the battleship died. It was a biplane or a couple biplanes with torpedoes knocking out the Bismarck steering system, which basically made it, sitting duck. And it just showed that two biplanes can take down a complete waste of material, and still the United States naval commander didn't listen until we started using our aircraft carriers because that's the only thing we had left. And they're like, oh, these things are actually pretty cool. And
Is
then the
that
Coral
why-
Sea was the very first battle fought where the ships didn't see each other.
Is that why playing War Thunder's water campaign is like really boring? Is that why? Because World War II battleships just sucked.
Yeah. Well, it's not the fact that they suck. Like if there was ever like a battle of Jutland in World War II, it would have been massively like amazing to study. The problem is that aircraft carriers made that type of stuff obsolete.
Yeah. The battleships mostly got used for supporting amphibious landings.
Oh yeah, those
There
16s
was really only one major battle in the Guadalcanal campaign that the battleships closed in at night and actually got in range to fire at each other.
Yeah, But the Mount Suribachi was pelted by the 16 inchers on the USS Iowa, and maybe the Missouri. But yeah, it's a. I don't think a 16 incher ever fired on another battleship.
No, on one of the landing campaigns, the New Jersey, the gunners were going by the specs in the book instead of by its actual trials. And they overshot the island completely and hit some British landing craft coming in from the opposite side.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
I love gross incompetence.
You'll see a lot of that in the wars.
Well, it was
was
the
all of
difference
them?
between what the designers said they could do and what they actually could do once they got the weapons going.
Didn't they forget to turn the Falkland Island conflict to turn the Coriolis effect calculation backwards, so that when they actually shot at the Argentinian warships, they were missing until they figured it out that they actually had to turn the.
I hadn't heard that one, but that's quite believable.
Oh, that's lovely.
Because it works the opposite direction in the southern hemisphere.
Yeah, instead of your shells turning to the right, they turn to the left.
Yep. Oh, the Graf Spee was impressive too, because it actually got out into the ocean. Wasn't that the one sunk in Uruguay, right off Uruguay's coast? But it actually wreaked havoc on convoys.
Actually, the Graf Spee was not sunk. It wound up getting cornered in Brazil by a bunch of British cruisers. And Brazil claimed to be neutral, but they had this little policy that said any ship that stayed in their harbor for 3 days became the property of the Brazilian government. So basically, the crew of the Graf Spee decided that if they went out, they were going to get sunk and probably all die, so instead become residents of Brazil.
Then which was it the Scharnhorst that went to Uruguay and got sunk then?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the Scharnhorst.
See, I don't know anything about all this history.
Yeah, the naval history.
It's weird, but at least I got a drink.
The naval history gets swept under the rug quite a bit, except for the Wolf Pack, and then the Pearl Harbor, and sometimes Coral Sea. Midway is talked about a lot, but beyond that, the number of naval battles was pretty slim. It was a lot of them chasing each other with aircraft carriers.
Hi, Kitty.
Oh, brother.
You want to know why we don't hear about naval battles anymore? Because we figured out how to take the lint out.
Kitty. Oh, there you go.
No, I was making sure everything was all situated.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Genesis.
How are you?
I'm all right.
Yeah.
I have a lot of mess to make. And I'm waiting on this stupid thing to finish processing. Like, the upload is done. Now it's processing. And it's taking forever.
Kitty's been trying to upload a video for like 2.5 hours, just so you guys know what she's talking about.
Yeah. So that's fun.
See, this is why I just go live. I don't have to deal with any of that crap. I don't write scripts. I just go live and just see what happens. I just roll the dice, man. Fuck it.
I figured I would show off my beautiful, beautiful sewing machine because I'm not wearing any makeup.
That's okay.
That
we can see
is a
sewing
great
machine
brand
and
from what I
sometimes a
hear.
boob, so we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boob.
Okay.
A boob.
I'm not wearing a bra, so I gotta wear my jacket zipped up, or you might see a little bit more than a little cleavage. So
No, don't get me kicked off of YouTube, man. No, it's good.
no. Zip,
Randy.
good.
Hey, anything short of a nipple, you're good here.
Yeah.
There. Has anybody noticed that boobs look like a
I used
butt?
to pretend
Like when
it.
you push them together, like it looks like the crack of an ass.
Yep.
No, guys know that. That's why they want to. Never
Yeah.
mind. We're not going into that. Anyway.
There was a
After
South
World War
Park
II.
episode with that.
Yeah, there was.
Look at-
Yep, I remember that.
Hey,
Let's talk
we
about
can't
the
talk
soci-
about
I
this
used to
stuff.
I used to
Sweetheart
judge
will
wet
start
t-shirt contest.
pumping too hard.
let's talk about the
I used to pretend I was
socio-political.
blind.
Go ahead, Jen.
Let's talk about the socio-political impact of tits or ass in World War II.
The fact that Hitler couldn't get laid.
Well,
for
everybody
like
got a
20
lot of
years
Farford
before it
nookie,
caused
that's
the
for
issue.
sure.
I
You know,
mean,
Hitler had one testicle that didn't develop. He was a one ball man.
Yeah.
Well, there was the American habit
distended
of putting
testicle.
pinup girls on the aircraft.
Hey, you guys could also talk about the drugs that they gave the Nazi soldiers.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
they
That's
were.
why
had
they
them
were so
hopped up.
crazy on the battlefield. How about
they
that
were
one?
hopped
My
up on
favorite
amphetamine.
meme is the addition of a comma to "war on drugs" to a picture of Nazis with "war, comma on drugs."
Yeah, there you go. If you haven't put it up, I'll put it up there for you, sweet. That's great. I'd like to see that one.
Well, you know, the same thing happened in American factories during the war effort. They introduced, I guess, certain amphetamines, and production was up in the first 3 months, and accidents tripled after that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. They gave them a bunch of meth, got them all hopped up on meth, and
once
then
they
made them
started
go
getting
fight
used
for
to
3
it.
days straight. Yep.
Yes. So you're working at the factory, and then you cut your thumb off.
Yeah, what was that? Probably
Yep.
to get people to work 12-hour shifts.
I have
12.
a
Probably
I have a meme
24.
for you.
Oh, wait a minute. There's one up there. Hold on. Let me pull
I have a
that
meme
up.
for you. This is just
Okay.
one of my favorite meme formats. It's the Panzer of a Lake meme format. I just love it so much. I don't know why.
Oh my God, Jen.
Nice.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
That's funny.
And-
But no, like honestly, like drug policy in America, like I mean, I could talk about that and how it had nothing to do with public health, but was based on racism. And I bring that up because the propaganda, like cocaine used to actually be in Coca-Cola, and you had morphine in kids' cough medicine.
Yep.
And it was essentially outlawed, not because, we're getting people hooked on cocaine and morphine, but because of racist propaganda. For cocaine, it was they would give it to black dock workers. So the cocaine-crazed Negro was what they were using as a scare tactic. Basically, they're going to assault the white women, protect the white women. So they outlawed cocaine. For marijuana, it was Mexican immigrants. And there was a time in Texas you could get life imprisonment for any marijuana contraband, which sucks. And then opium was against the Asian immigrants. They were fine to build the railroads, but then, opium dens, and you got to protect the white women from, the opium dens and the Asians wanting to take advantage of them. It literally, white women were just fucking dangled out there as the damsel in distress to justify the racism, bigotry, and xenophobia.
Well,
isn't the
yeah.
whole-
You use
Yep, and
well,
every
that's the best
Dudley
way to
Do
get to a
right had
man's
to
heart,
volunteer.
either through his stomach or his penis.
Isn't
worked.
the reason marijuana called marijuana, isn't that because of like racist
Justify.
propaganda?
It was originally cannabis or hemp. In fact, George Washington had like a hemp farm, if I recall correctly. Hemp was
Mhm.
actually a
did.
prime textile in the founding of the country because it makes better paper, it grows
Yep.
faster than trees, and it doesn't require as much to actually nurture it to grow. It grows like a weed. That's why they call it weed.
Weed, right?
They
Yep, exactly.
literally changed the name from cannabis or hemp to marijuana, essentially just to make it sound scary and Mexican.
Well, and cannabis is also the same root word that we get canvas from. That right through World War I, most of the army tents were made of it.
Makes sense.
And then
Makes a
when
lot of sense.
pharmaceutical companies got involved, they wanted to make sure that they lobbied a lot to keep it from becoming legalized, and still do, because they can't compete with it. It actually, alcohol too, but to a lesser extent, it's mostly the pharmaceutical companies, because they can't patent it. They can't make a profit on it. That's why you see them make synthetic cannabis, which has horrible fucking side effects, and all because they care about their bottom line.
Yeah. That's why the CBD oil is legal, but smoking marijuana isn't, because that's a synthetic product that they can market.
Yep.
But yeah,
I got a cousin who's a grower.
Hemp was a common thing, and one of the reasons that it had been outlawed, and if my citation is Behind the Nylon Curtain, it's a book, and it's DuPont and nylon, hemp and canvas and all that was competition to nylon, and DuPont, with the cooperation of William Randolph Hearst operating the newspapers, had this big smear campaign against hemp and weed in order to create pardon me, I'm getting a little buzzed here, nylon basically, to get nylon, get the hemp out of the way, and you blaze the way for using synthetic nylon.
Yeah, because hemp can be used to make paper, but it can also be used to make fabrics and canvases. Like very much, it is a fantastic agricultural crop. I mean, you can make ropes. You can use hemp seed oil for cooking, which has like no trans fats. It's actually really healthy as far as cooking oils go. Like, there is so much potential, but you have so many companies that their bottom line would be affected by it.
Yeah, it was also used for making rope, which is why we have the phrase "smoke a rope," because again, in World War I, the soldiers were literally smoking the rope.
And the amount of THC in fucking hemp rope is so negligible, like, honestly.
Yeah, but when you're out on a battlefield, they'd take anything they could get, and they couldn't get cigarettes.
I was told
Kitty,
not to do it because then I'd start hanging with jazz musicians.
Yeah. Kitty, don't you have like a Patreon or something like that for your masks?
I have a Cash App that's linked on my Twitter. Why?
Well, because I wanted to throw it out there in case anybody wants to contribute to your mask making.
Oh, well, thank you.
I like the History Channel reference there.
Great, sweet. Thank you.
That wasn't the exact one either. It was Ronald Reagan with war on drugs, and then it was a bunch of German soldiers with war, on drugs.
You're right.
I mean,
they're both great.
I said, hey, I said in the chat that no Nazis allowed here, including grammar Nazis. So, like, let's not criticize the commas, okay?
No, we were criticizing the Germans giving their soldiers meth so they could
absolutely. They were so fucking hopped up on methamphetamines. That's what got me on the whole, drug war in the United States, was because, German soldiers hopped up on amphetamines, and we did the same thing to workers in the U.S.
We did the same thing to our pilots. My grandpa would talk about the white pill in his breakfast tin. That was, if they were in a mission to fly from Foggia to Berlin, that was 12 hours, and you're in combat zone 8 of the 12 hours you're in the air. So you need an amphetamine to keep you going during that time.
They called them energy pills.
White rabbit.
So
chasing the white rabbit, something different.
So I have a question. Did this tactic of using drugs come from the Vikings? Because
no, it did not come from the Berserker tradition.
Okay, I was just wondering because a lot of historians say that there's evidence to suggest that Berserkers were high on mushrooms.
Yeah, it's the entire amphetamine thing was to basically make, in advance go from 8 hours to 12 hours so that they could cover more ground.
Honestly, if they weren't hopped up on drugs, I wonder if things might have gone a little bit differently. Like, Hitler was on a fuck ton of drugs, a veritable cocktail that would make fucking Michael Jackson's cocktail of drugs look pale in comparison.
Oh yeah, Hi Hitler is a great History Channel show.
I was going to bring that up.
It's an actual.
Never heard of it. Sounds pretty funny.
It's a BBC adaptation, so you know it's actually good. And it's all about. Was it Dr. Morales? Was his doctor or something? But it goes into how he basically kept Hitler in a basically psychotic state his entire adult life through the cocktails of drugs that he was on.
There you go, Swede. That's it.
I mean, he'd have to be
Man
pretty
in the monster
tweaked to make the same mistake as Napoleon a few years after. Has anybody seen Eddie Izzard's Dressed to Kill?
Yes.
So I'm gonna kill them, I'm gonna kill them. Oh, it's a bit cold, it's a bit cold. Hitler comes around, I've got a better idea, Oh, it's the same idea.
Hitler never played Risk when he was a kid.
Australasia, all the purples, Papua New Guinea, and build up. I fucking love it.
Seven extra men at the beginning of every go. Couldn't fucking hold it.
Well, if the Japanese emperor had ever played Risk as a kid, he would have known the first move is to invade Australia.
Yeah, right? Like, I try to fucking sit on Australia and just mind my own business, defend my borders, build up, and then take over the world.
I want to create a sovereign nation of Antarctica.
I forgot.
That is crazy. I mean, I can't even imagine getting like high and running heavy equipment, never mind chewing on peyote and then running into a war. Like, that's crazy.
I have a plan to literally build my own sovereign nation. Anyone can help. The only requirement is everyone's got to bring 50,000 Lego pieces, so we build our own island. Lego floats.
I mean, my son's working on building up his own little repertoire over here. He loves Legos. Like, if you hear clattering in the background, that's him playing with his Legos.
Sorry, Purple, but I do not want to be indebted to Denmark.
Actually, one night when I got drunk on Twitter, I had started a campaign for Denmark to declare Lego their official currency.
Denmark's been at war with Canada for like 50 years now. I don't like them. Look up the Whiskey War.
Don't you guys keep swapping a bottle of booze on a flag?
Yep. Yeah,
Like
they exchange flags on an island near Greenland,
and
they look up the Whiskey War. They're technically still at war with each other.
I would have.
There's been an ongoing war between the U.S. and Canada over an island in Lake Superior because they keep going out there and moving the buoys that mark the borderline because the U.S. Department claims it's part of Canada and the Canadians claim it's part of the U.S. Nobody wants that piece of rock out there.
Drummond Island.
Can I take it and make my own nation?
I've been there fishing.
Well, you guys could do like that.
There. It's awesome.
You could do like that one guy did. He went around and picked up a bunch of trash, and he got a bunch of bottles, and he sealed them all, and he started putting them all together, and now he has his own little island right off the coast somewhere. I can't remember. He's right. It's
Mexico,
like
I
right
believe.
by the shore. Huh?
I think it's Mexico.
Yeah, it might be. It's probably the only place he can get away with it. But he's got like trees and plants and a house and a garden. And it's all floating on like milk jugs and plastic jugs.
Yeah, like I saw a documentary on that. It was fascinating.
Yeah, and he makes it all. He grows his plants from the water he's floating on, catches fish, eats good. Him and his wife. Yeah,
it's pretty amazing. The bottles don't break down because plastic bottles are photodegenerative, but because they're not exposed to the sunlight, they don't break down. So he's got like full flotation.
Right, and then anytime he finds more floating down through the area he's in, I think he might be on a big river or lake or something like that. He just grabs them and pulls them in and adds them on.
But okay, just hear me out on my reason for wanting to create a.
Go ahead.
Hear me out on why I want to create a sovereign nation of Antarctica. Okay, have you ever seen John Carpenter's movie The Thing?
Yes.
I'm not entirely sure that that's not a documentary and that there's not some highly contagious alien life form in Antarctica. I want to weaponize it. I want to eliminate every single other country so that the sovereign nation of Antarctica stands alone.
Man, you'd be one lonely motherfucker. You know that?
Okay. How do you
Yeah.
plan
Yes.
to deal?
Yeah.
How much do you
How
like
do you
fish?
plan to
Do you
deal
really
with the
like
army
fish?
of
'Cause
assault
that's what you eat.
penguins?
I eat nothing but meat anyways. Fish is just other meat.
Right. I'm sorry, Purple. Go ahead.
How do you plan to deal with the army
Sounds
of
like
assault
my ex.
penguins?
She was the evil bitch from hell.
I will conscript the assault penguins. I will give them my goods and services for their help in helping me conquer the rest of the world.
Well, you could take those penguins
Oh, that's
and,
easy. All
and
you got to do is
train them,
introduce another color.
raise them and train them, and then you could just put weaponry on them, and they can just go around and swoop down and come up out of the water and shoot somebody for you.
I
Hey,
won't
now.
even need to train them how to use the weapons.
Penguins with lasers.
I could just have like automatic turrets that are strapped to their backs like
Right.
backpacks, like War Machine from the Iron Man comics with like a little minigun and it just auto targets things. I wouldn't even need to train them how to use the
Right.
guns. Walk towards people.
Did we try this with dolphins already?
Someone did. I think the CIA.
Yeah, we tried to weaponize dolphins.
Yeah, it didn't fucking work.
The Russians are still working on something similar. A couple of years ago, 2 beluga whales showed up in a harbor in Sweden wearing Russian collars. So Sweden has given them asylum and they're now living there. They don't know how they escaped from the Russians, but
My home country is kind of messed up with half of what it's trying to do right now, but I'll give them credit for that.
Right. All right, guys.
Just killing half of your citizenry by ignoring a virus during a pandemic.
Right. Yeah, no doubt.
Fuck you,
right?
Sweden.
Took the Donald Trump approach.
They did. They
But at
took.
least they have health care for everybody. Like, so Trump is still worse.
Oh, we're
Yeah.
not going there. Nope, we're ending the stream. That's it. We're not talking about Trump. Fuck that orange bastard.
Well, no, I'm saying like his handling of the pandemic was worse than Sweden's because we don't at least have socialized healthcare here, whereas in Sweden they do.
Sweden is saying we'll let you catch the virus, but then we'll help you.
Hopefully, well, they did until their ICUs became completely booked, and then things got even more hairy. So
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
they were at 104% capacity at one point.
that's insane.
Why aren't we all like Japan where we all wear masks anyways when we're sick? That's just like such a good idea, and Japan figured it out
Right?
like years ago. So it's
That's
like
what I'm saying.
That's because
So
the
the problem-
Chinese are so packed in close together, and the flu, everybody gets the flu there, that they've been doing it. Yeah, they've been wearing masks for fucking years.
Well,
Yeah,
since
our-
the problem
our
is the
company-
people who believe in all the conspiracies, I've been trying to push the narrative that the masks screw up the facial recognition software that the deep state is using to track our movements.
I don't care, whatever it gets
Yeah.
to use them, gets them to use
I
them.
mean, like that's at least a little believable considering Face ID cannot fucking unlock my phone when I got a mask on. So
Also good for criminals.
Yeah.
Anyways, everybody. Okay, yeah, thanks.
Okay.
So we're gonna we're gonna shut this down. We've been going for 2 hours now. I'm tired, and the rest of my dinner is sitting right there. So I'm gonna get off here. Thank you all for coming
I
in.
had
I really
a great
appreciate
time.
it. Me too. Me too. It was good info. And thanks for jumping in late there, sweet. I appreciate your brain.
Yeah.
Kitty and Jen, thanks for bringing up this topic. That was really good. Purple, thanks for jumping in. Randy, and everybody in the chat. And we're going to take off out of here. You guys all have a good week. Take care of one another and peace out.